Title: Stoker's darkest secret about Dracula was hidden in plain sight. You think you know Dracula, the cape, the fangs, the castle, the creature of the night, the ultimate vampire who has haunted our collective nightmares for over a century. We know his weaknesses: sunlight, garlic, a stake to the heart. We know his enemies: the brave Jonathan Harker, the brilliant Van Helsing, and the pure-hearted Mina. But what if the story you know is a lie? Not a lie told by Hollywood, but a lie told by the book itself. What if I told you that Bram Stoker, the author of this horror masterpiece, pulled off a trick so brilliant that it has gone largely unnoticed by millions of readers? He didn't just write a scary story about a vampire. He built a terrifying secret into the very structure of the novel. And once you see it, the way you read Dracula will be changed forever. Here's the first thing you have to understand about Dracula. It's not a normal novel. There's no all-knowing narrator guiding you through the story. Instead, what we're reading is a collection of documents: personal diary entries, letters, newspaper clippings, a ship's log, and even phonograph recordings. This style is called an epistolary novel. For years, readers and critics saw this as a clever way to make the story feel more real and to build suspense. But that's just scratching the surface. The truth is way more unsettling. This structure isn't just a storytelling gimmick, it is the secret. Bram Stoker didn't just write a book, he assembled a dossier. He created a file of curated evidence, and in doing so, he built a narrative founded on secrets and half-truths. Each character gives their own testimony, but each one only knows a tiny piece of the puzzle. They are all unreliable narrators, not because they're liars, but because they're human. They're scared, traumatized, and biased. The collection of papers we're reading isn't an objective account of what happened. It's a carefully constructed argument assembled after the fact by the survivors to prove that they were the heroes and Dracula was the monster. The darkest secret of the novel isn't in the story. The story is the secret. It's a cover-up hidden in plain sight. Let's take a look at our sources. Our first guide into this nightmare is Jonathan Harker, a young lawyer sent to a remote castle. His journal is our only window into Dracula's world, but Harker is under extreme psychological distress. He's isolated, terrified, and pretty sure he's losing his mind. His whole account is filtered through pure terror. So, can we trust him? Is he a reliable witness, or is he a man so traumatized that his grip on reality has been permanently warped? Then there's Dr. John Seward, a man of science who runs an asylum and records his thoughts on a modern phonograph. He represents logic and reason. But Seward is also completely distracted. He's obsessed with his unrequited love for Lucy Westenra, and his diary is often more about his romantic brooding than an objective analysis of her mysterious illness. He's recording facts, sure, but he's missing the truth because his own emotional turmoil is clouding his judgment. Even the heroines, Lucy and Mina, add to the fractured truth. Their letters and diaries are shaped by the constraints of Victorian society. They hold back information to avoid seeming hysterical or causing a panic. Mina, who ultimately compiles the entire manuscript, admits to keeping her own anxieties and disturbing dreams secret from the others. This means the official record, the very documents we're reading, is built on a foundation of deliberate omissions. They aren't telling each other the full story, so how can they be telling us the full story? We, the readers, are basically detectives, piecing together a timeline from this mess of subjective, incomplete, and emotionally compromised accounts. Stoker forces us into the character's shoes to see the world through a fog of confusion and fear, where the complete picture is always just out of reach. If the story is a cover-up, then the biggest clues aren't in what's said, but in what's left out. The silence in Dracula is deafening, and that's where the real horror lives. Here's a shocking piece of evidence that comes from outside the novel. The first Icelandic translation of Dracula, called Makt meir krana, Powers of Darkness, was published in 1901 and included a preface attributed to Stoker that was cut from other editions. In this preface, Stoker presents the story as if the events were real, a metafictional trick to blur the line between fact and fiction and heighten the horror for the reader. This wasn't a claim of literal truth, but a brilliant literary device to make the terror feel immediate and authentic. On top of that, research into Stoker's original manuscript revealed that the first 101 pages were cut before publication. The version of Dracula we all know is an edited, shortened document. While some of this cut material was later published as the short story Dracula's Guest, the novel we hold in our hands is, by its very nature, an incomplete truth, a story with a huge chunk missing from its beginning. This idea of hidden meaning is woven right into the text. Early on, Harker sees mysterious blue flames on the roadside and dismisses them as superstition. but Stoker was pulling from actual Transylvanian folklore, where these flames were said to mark the location of buried treasure, often guarded by evil spirits. This isn't just a random spooky detail, it's a symbol for the novel itself. The truth of the story is like that treasure, buried just under the surface and guarded by a terrible power. We're digging up secrets that have been buried for over 100 years, finding the blue flames in the text that point to a hidden story. If you're enjoying this deep dive, take a second to subscribe and join our investigation. Next, we're turning the evidence on the heroes themselves, and you won't want to miss it. Now that we know the narrative is a fractured and censored construct, we have to look at the people who built it, the so-called crew of light. How heroic are they, really? Their leader is Professor Abraham Van Helsing. He's presented as the wise old scholar who understands the ancient evil they're up against. But Van Helsing is often just guessing. His methods are frequently brutal and experimental. He's the one who orchestrates the multiple violating blood transfusions for Lucy, a procedure that was dangerous and not well understood at the time. His science is often just as much a shot in the dark as any superstition. This points to a central tension in the novel, the failure of modernity against the ancient and unknowable. The characters put all their faith in technology, telegrams, typewriters, phonographs, medicine, to understand and control their situation. But what do these tools actually accomplish? Telegrams arrive too late. The phonograph only captures Seward's biased view. The typewriter, which Mina uses to assemble the manuscript, just organizes the chaos into a readable, but still subjective, narrative. Their modern tools don't give them power over the supernatural. They just give them new ways to document their own confusion and failure. This brings us to one of Dracula's most famous traits. He casts no reflection. Stoker used this to symbolize that the Count is soulless. But let's extend that metaphor. The collection of documents Mina assembles is supposed to be a mirror, a perfect reflection of what happened. But if the narrators are unreliable, if the manuscript was censored, if the whole story is built on secrets and omissions, then it's a broken mirror. It can't possibly show a perfect reflection of the truth. So what is this broken mirror hiding about our heroes? It hides their failures, their brutality, their confusion. It hides the fact that the crew of light staked a woman in her coffin in what reads like a frenzied ritualistic killing. It frames them as saviors, but through the cracks in their own story, a more disturbing picture emerges. A group of frightened people who responded to a force they didn't understand with violence, and then wrote a history to justify their actions. So what is Bram Stoker's darkest secret? It isn't some hidden lore about Count Dracula. The secret, hidden in plain sight, is that the Book of Dracula is a lie. It's a lie of omission, a conspiracy of partial truths, a history written by the victors. The crew of light didn't just defeat a monster, they encountered a force that shattered their modern, rational view of the world. To make sense of the horror, they gathered their fragmented memories, their diaries, their letters, their recordings, and stitched them together into a story that made sense. They cast themselves as crusaders and Dracula as pure evil because the alternative was too terrifying to face, that they were caught in something ancient they could never comprehend, and that their own actions were just as monstrous as the vampires. The true horror of Dracula isn't the fear of a monster breaking into your home. It's the fear that you can never really know the truth. It is the fear of unreliable information and curated realities, a truth that is buried forever beneath the official story. Stoker wrote a novel about the deep, unsettling anxiety that our knowledge is incomplete, and our version of reality is just a story we tell ourselves to keep the dark at bay. It was a terrifyingly Victorian fear that has become more relevant than ever. In the end, the book itself is the ultimate unreliable narrator. It pretends to be a collection of objective evidence, but it's actually the perfect crime. A story that hides its greatest secret in the very way it's told. So I'll leave you with this. After all of that, who do you think is the real villain of Dracula? The monster who never gets to tell his side of the story, or the people who wrote it? Let me know your thoughts in the comments.